Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to episode 72 of the Falcoholic Live. I am, of course, your host, Kevin Knight, at Falcoholic Kevin on Twitter, joined tonight by two co-hosts, one of which is not here yet, but he will be, I promise. First of all, I want to welcome Adnan Ikic, at Say Which Way on Twitter, to the show. Adnan, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well this evening, and I mean, it's okay. At least one of us has to be fashionably late. I was late for the draft party, so now it's Eric's turn.
Exactly. So I can't be late because I have to press the button for go. But everyone else, it's okay from time to time if you guys are late. We appreciate you anyway. But we are here, folks, to recap the Falcons' 2019 draft class. They finished the draft with 7 picks. They started the day with 9, and we know that they made several trade-ups and certain maneuvers to eventually get down to 7, which I think we all realized was a much more reasonable number. 9 rookies were simply not making the roster. There just isn't room. So we're going to break down each pick. We're going to get some takes going on those guys, and we'll give you our thoughts on the class as a whole. I know I'm a fan of it. Eric and I did the Falcoholic podcast yesterday, and we talked about it some more, but we'll get Adnan's take on it as well. So, obviously, the Falcons made 2 picks in the first round. I think a lot of people were very much on the trade-up for Ed Oliver bandwagon, obviously myself being one of those supporters, but they weren't able to pull off the trade. Some of the buzz was that Detroit decided that they couldn't wait on Hawkinson and that they needed to pick him at 8, which was probably true. Some of it was saying that the Falcons, Dimitrov was saying that the Falcons had no interest in trading up, which I think is not true.
Lies.
All lies. But the Falcons decided to wait at 14 and take a player that no one had projected since maybe, January to go to the Falcons. Guard Chris Lindstrom from Boston College, who was widely viewed by analysts as either the top or the number 2 guard in the class. Great athlete as a player, but Adnan, I'll let you get your word in here because I'm sure people are tired of hearing me talking. So, what are your thoughts on the pick of Lindstrom at 14?
I was completely shocked, to be honest with you. Remember, we mocked him in our Falcoholic mock that we had a week prior to the draft. We mocked Chris Lindstrom to the Falcons in the second round. We did the draft simulator. He was there in the second round, and I was thinking, that would be great if he was there in the second round and we got him. I didn't think he would fall there. I think that was legitimately plan B. I think they really wanted Ed Oliver, and when Detroit said no to the trade-up that they wanted Hawkinson, that they went with their second option with Lindstrom. My gut tells me that, maybe we should have traded back and taken him, but then if he's your guy, you never want to take that risk. You want to take him, you want to take him and, have him. You don't want to play the game of the draft and gamble away like that. But, I'm fine with it. I mean, I've been preaching for months that I want the Falcons to fix their trenches, to fix the offensive line. I thought we were going to go defensive line. But, I mean, I'll be damned if I'm going to sit up here and just criticize the fact that the Falcons went offensive line in the first round, offensive line heavy, when that's what we've been calling for the past few years. So I'm completely fine with that pick, and I'm completely fine with the Mcgarry pick as well.
Yeah, because, I mean, if anyone's watched the show for the long term since we started, I believe I opened up the first draft wanting I can't remember if that was the Forrest Lamp year or not. I don't think the first year was the Forrest Lamp year. I think the first year was somebody else. But I know I was interested in them taking offensive line back in 2017. Then no, that was the Forrest Lamp year. 2017 was the Forrest Lamp year. So when they traded up for Tack, I was convinced that they were trading it for Forrest Lamp, and they did not. And then last year I thought they were going to take Taven Bryan, but whatever. So, I mean, I've been wanting them to take a guard high for a long time, but we were all pretty much convinced that they just didn't view guards that highly. They've basically, outside of the Levitre trade, they've basically refused to even pay guards premium free agent dollars. So the Lindstrom pick was a little bit surprising for sure. And welcome, Eric, to the show. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Pardon my tardiness.
That's okay. We used it to talk. We used it to fill up like at least 3 minutes of airtime talking about how you were late. So thank you for that. But
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, but we're talking about the Lindstrom pick. You got here just in time to weigh in. What were your thoughts on the pick of Lindstrom at 14?
I was high on the Lindstrom bandwagon early in the draft process. My early mocks had Lindstrom in the second round, so it was a little higher than I expected them to target him. But all in all, I look at it as they get a guy who can definitely be an all-pro when it's all said and done as far as his career. I mean, this guy he can have a 10-year career in the league, fairly solid, make a couple all-pro teams, maybe even make a few Pro Bowls if possible. But he's about as solid as they come, and he's one of the safer picks in the entire draft, regardless if he was selected in the first or second round. I can't, as much as I wanted a pass rusher, I can't be mad at the team for wanting to protect their biggest investment, which is Matt Ryan. So that's what they did, and they got a guy like Lindstrom who can definitely, if he rounds into form like we expect him to, he can be a Pro Bowler possibly his rookie year. If not his rookie year, maybe his second year.
Yeah. I think we've all kind of warmed up to the pick. And as long as it wasn't a corner, I was going to be happy. Like, I went into the draft saying that, suck it, D-Led, you didn't get your corner at 14. Greedy Williams didn't even go in the first round, so take that.
He's still griping over it.
Still mad. Yeah.
Well, watch out, Kevin. D-Led might dig up some dirt on you.
Oh no, man! He's gonna find.
Unrelenting.
Yep, he's gonna find those pictures of me in college. Smoking doobies or something. Yeah.
Kevin did 7 years ago.
Yep, exactly. I cut off the music on White Boy Wednesday. So.
And then he'll ask nobody around you about it.
Exactly. He'll just be like, "Oh yeah, this happened for sure." But I do like the pick. Lindstrom compares athletically to some of the best guards in the NFL. He's in elite company with guys. I mean, I know Kyle Long is up there. Obviously, Quentin Nelson is one of the names that are the 10 closest athletic comps to him. Just a whole bunch of just super good guards. Like, he's in elite company as far as his athletic profile. And we know technically he's very sound as well. So all of the pieces are there for Lindstrom to be an above average to very good NFL starter. The only thing that might slow his development down, and I do want to get your guys' opinions on this as well, is the fact that the Falcons are probably going to need to move someone to left guard because their two biggest investments on the offensive line have been Jamon Brown, who has been a career right side starter, has only ever really looked above average at right guard, and Lindstrom, who basically played almost all of his entire career at right guard, does have a little bit of experience at left guard, but I expect that they'll probably move Lindstrom to the left side, which might delay his development to the NFL a little bit. But what do you guys think about the prospect of moving either Lindstrom or Jamon Brown to left guard?
I'm down to move Lindstrom to left guard, to be honest with you, because in the short term, like you said, it may hinder him a little bit in terms of training camp and the mini camps. But I think in the long term, that's what would be most beneficial to him, because you're slotting him in between your two best offensive linemen, and Alex Mack to his right and Jake Matthews to his left. And that's just a gift for a rookie like Chris Lindstrom. He's also an excellent pass blocker, one of the best pass blocking guards in college last season statistically. And I mean, I don't think he'll have an issue slotting in at left guard, even if it does, even if it is sort of tricky for him to start the season, having barely played left guard. I don't see an issue with it after, say, week 3 or 4. I think he'll adjust to it, and I think that's the best move long term for him.
Yeah. Do you think basically the same, Eric? Or?
Yeah, I think out of Lindstrom or Brown, I think Lindstrom will make the easier transition to left guard than a guy like Jamon Brown. Lindstrom has played left guard, right guard, and right tackle. He's earned all ACC accolades at right guard and right tackle throughout his career. I think he's capable of doing it. And like Adnan brought up the biggest point that I was going to bring up, it's not going to hurt the fact that he's playing in between Matthews and Mack. I mean, that may enhance his development, if anything, if we're looking at it a certain way. So I think Lindstrom's going to start off at left guard with Jamon taking that right guard spot.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense to not want to put two rookies next to each other on the offensive line. So kind of mixing them up with the veterans. I think also a lot of advanced analytics kind of bears out that left guard is the slightly more valuable position. So you put your young guy there, let him transition, and he's the long-term solution there. And then you keep the veteran guy that you paid a lot of money for at the spot that he's looked the most promising. I mean, I think Jamon Brown got a bad rap for his early career where they tried to play him at tackle, and he struggled. Then he was able to play right guard for the Giants last year and actually looked pretty good. So
right. The versatility comes into play. If Jamon Brown struggles, they can always take Lindstrom, slot him in at right guard, and bring Carpenter off the bench and have Carpenter be the left guard guy. So, I mean, the versatility comes into play there.
Yeah, versatility, and the Falcons are said to have more depth this season than I can remember in the past decade. I don't think the Falcons have ever had this much offensive line depth.
They can go too deep at each position. So
they want to give Kurt Benkert an actual chance to complete a pass in the preseason this year. So, but I think they view James Carpenter as a very valuable backup. Clearly, at least I hope they do, because they paid him a lot of money to be that guy. But I think they view him as a guy that can back up either guard spot very well. Tyson Braylo can also back up guard. He did it last year and looked pretty decent at the guard spot as well. So they have, and then Wes Schweitzer, if he ends up making the roster, which I expect he will. But, he's also a guy that we know can be a spot starter and not, like, sink your offensive line. Like, if it's just Wes Schweitzer on the line with four other good players, it's fine. But if it's Schweitzer and Garland in there, then it starts to get dicey. So they have a lot of depth. The big question mark for me is at center, but we'll have to see, what happens. I expect that they might add some more free agents there. I also do like their undrafted guy, but we're going to get to the undrafted free agents on our next show when we talk about some of the recap of the rookie minicamp and stuff like that, where we find out a little more information about these guys. And I do want to shout out some of the folks in the chat for joining us. Drake Acevedo, Jamie Workmeister, R. Fulton, I don't know what your first name is, Shadow Falcon, Don Emery, Kojak, Revolt, everybody, Robert Kelly. Thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate you. If you do have questions, I just saw yours, Robert. We'll try to get to you in a second. We appreciate you guys coming out, so thank you. So I'll go ahead and touch on Robert Kelly's question here because it does have to do with Lindstrom. So with Lindstrom at left guard, supposedly, and Matthews and Mack also on that side, do we see the team running more to the left as it should, in theory, be stronger? So what are your guys' thoughts on that?
While you're right, I do think the left side would, in theory, be stronger. I don't think they'll be eager to tip their hand and, run to one side more than the other. I think Cutter will try to balance out the runs, try to keep the defense on its toes, try and not be predictable with the runs with, running left a lot. And, I mean, don't forget Caleb Mcgarry at right tackle is one of the best run blocking right tackles out of this draft. So, I mean, he'll definitely be an asset in the run to the right. And Jamon Brown is no slouch either when it comes to the run. So I think this entire offensive line as a whole will be a strong run blocking unit no matter what side you run toward.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting because on the left side, I think they have just a ton of athleticism in Lindstrom and Matthews. And then on the right side, they have a lot of size and nastiness in Jamon Brown and Caleb Mcgarry. So it could be kind of a, more kind of a pick your poison. Like they might run more stretch stuff to the left and more inside zone to the right. And I also expect that they'll mix it up a fair amount as well. But
to be quite honest, I don't think Dan Quinn cares. He just wants to run the football.
Yeah.
And I honestly don't care either, as long as they're getting positive yards.
Right, as long as it's better than last year and the year before and so on. Hopefully with Freeman healthy, we'll have some more consistent running as well. So let's get on to the second pick, which was a trade up back into the late 30s. Eric had given up on the trade up, but I kept hope alive. I kept the flame burning until 31, and it ended up working out for us there. So the Falcons traded up with the Rams for pick 31.
Jedi mind trick.
Exactly, yeah. That was what you were doing all day too, as well. I know, but they traded up from 45, so they swapped 45 and 31, and then the Falcons threw in their third round pick and received a 6th-round pick from the Rams. So they actually ended up walking away with the same amount of picks that they left with in that trade. They ended up taking a tackle that was kind of surprising to us at the time in Caleb Mcgarry. I know I viewed him as a pretty big reach based on my initial evaluation. I've since reevaluated him fully, and you can read that report on thefalcoholic.com. And changed my mind on him, but I'll let you guys talk about what your thoughts are on Caleb Mcgarry. So, Eric, why don't you go after this one first?
As far as Mcgarry goes, he's about as rugged and aggressive as you can get as a right tackle. He does come with some red flags, which includes, not the ideal arm length. But I think what he makes up in arm length, he makes up in what he lacks in arm length, he makes up in size. I mean, this guy is 6'7", roughly 320 pounds. So even if he doesn't have that long reach, he's still tough to get around with really good short area quickness. He may struggle against edge speed rushers, but with his ability to punch his defenders first, which he's shown a lot on tape. He's able to get his body, get his hands on the defenders first. That can offset that because there's not a lot of speed rushers who can be able to toss Mcgarry around. He's about as strong as they come as well. I think one time when at UW he squatted 630 at one point.
Yeah, something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, pretty. That's stupid.
Yeah.
No. Was he a reach? Probably so. I had him rated as a top 50 player, but you would, if you watch the live show, especially on the second night, you will know that Kevin and I were saying that, hey, we kind of sensed an offensive tackle run that late first round, going into the second round, and if the Falcons would have stayed at that 45th overall pick, in the second round, they saw like 4 right tackles or 4 offensive tackles, period, come off the board before that 45 pick. So maybe Dimitroff played it smart by going up and getting Mcgarry before what was possible. He's not available at 45.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And that was something that I think we had kind of predicted, and it did happen. I mean, 4 more tackles went before the Falcons picked. And then there was also the rumor, which I think is a pretty strong rumor at this point, we've heard it from several sources, that the Patriots really liked Mcgarry and they were potentially going to take him at 32. So if the Patriots were really going to take him at 32, that begs the question: can we really call it a reach if there was another team that was going to take him there?
That along with the Texans taking Titus Howard at 23, who I think they were really interested in the second round. I think that prompted Dimitroff to say, "Hey, let me go get my guy just to be sure." And lo and behold, he made a pretty decent move.
Yeah, I still can't believe Titus Howard went at 23. That's absurd to me.
I like him, but
I like him too. Not that much.
Overall,
yeah.
Not with guys like Cody Ford still go.
Yeah, that was crazy. But Adnan, what were your thoughts on the Mcgarry pick at 31?
I just want to compliment Thomas Dimitroff and Dan Quinn for going up and getting their guy. Whether or not Caleb Mcgarry becomes a Pro Bowler, works out, whatever, I think is beside this point. I like the fact that they wanted him. They saw that he wasn't going to fall to 45, and he wasn't. And they went up, packaged the picks together, and got their guy and predicted successfully a tackle run where four offensive tackles did go after Mcgarry between that pick and where the Atlanta Falcons were originally slated to pick. As for Mcgarry as a player, I mean, I like him. I also worry about speed rushes. Arm length isn't ideal, and his lateral quickness needs to, get a little bit better. But Caleb Mcgarry in the run is a beast against when it comes to run blocking. And when it comes to toughness, I don't think there's a single tougher player in this draft than Mcgarry. He's fought through adversity his whole life, and he's going to work. He's going to work his butt off in the NFL. And this is a guy who is going to come in. I predict he'll slot in at right tackle. And Dan Quinn wants to run. Dan Quinn will be able to run at will. The Atlanta Falcons will be able to run at will this season with this offensive line. And I'm not going to lie, that video with Caleb Mcgarry telling that defensive player to eat his...
It's okay. It's okay. You can say it.
Well, telling that defensive player to eat his ass made me love the pick even more, because I mean that's what we need. That's what this offensive line has been lacking. I don't remember that kind of a meme player since Tyson Clabo and Harvey Dahl were on this team a decade ago.
That and him saying that he wanted to be the boogeyman on the offensive line. Like again, by the end of his rookie year, I would not be surprised if we look at Mcgarry and say he's the most physical player on that offensive line. He's basically Ryan Schrader, but with an attitude.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that we're going to all end up really liking the pick, in a year's time when we're back here. And I think we're all going to really like that the Falcons just made a concerted effort to remake this offensive line. I think we're going to, if the Falcons do go far in 2019, I think this will be the reason why, and it's that this offensive line was totally revamped, that they played well, they were a big improvement over previous seasons, and I think that we'll be happy with these decisions.
And if I can just make a comment on the revamp of the offensive line, I wrote an article about this, which published today. It's the exact same blueprint as what the Indianapolis Colts followed last season, where the Colts last season got 2 guards on bargain contracts in free agency, and then in the draft they take Quentin Nelson with their first pick, and in the second round they take Braden Smith in the high second round with the pick they got from the Jets to move back and take Nelson with. And that's exactly what the Atlanta Falcons did this year. They took 2 guards on relative bargain contracts in free agency and spent their first 2 picks on guard and tackle, even though the Colts had 3 picks in the first 2 rounds. And I mean, I think that they followed that blueprint of the Indianapolis Colts, and I hope that we see the same results, because both teams also had 2 holdovers on the offensive line at left tackle and center as well, which is also a fun little tidbit.
And and they added, I think it was the draft before then when they added Ryan Kelly, who reminded a lot of analysts of Alex Mack.
Yeah, 2016. Ryan Kelly's rookie season. He took a step back in 2017, fought injuries, and then he really bounced back last season. But the Indianapolis Colts went from giving up a league-high 56 sacks to giving up 18 sacks over the course of one offseason. I'm not expecting that much of an improvement for the Atlanta Falcons, but I mean, it's good to see that they're really concentrating on the offensive line, and it'll be fun to see an offensive line that's finally, good.
Good. Yeah, I mean, I think they kind of lucked into it in 2016 with like Chris Chester playing pretty well, and Ryan Schrader no injuries at all. Yeah. So, they kind of walked into it that year, and that line was definitely more finesse than anything, and it worked for him. But this line should be more nasty, I think. So.
And I know, going back to that 2016 season, I know everybody fell in love with, how they were able to score at will pretty much and put the ball in the air with their receivers. But later in the year was when we saw that run game take over games. I mean, you go back to that season and, against San Francisco, I think Freeman had a season high in that game. That they were able to run the football when they needed to. And when they were able to run the football, they were getting chunk yards. I think that's when the offense is really at its best. Not really when Matt Ryan is going for 4,500 yards and 40 touchdowns. I think it's really at its best when Freeman is pulling off 5-6 yards a carry, and they're able to put up 150, 160 rushing yards a game.
And I will say this, on 3rd and short, don't expect any more shotgun formations like we saw last season, the last 2 seasons. We'll actually be able to convert on those 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3 when the opposing team knows that we're going to run for a fact and they can't really do anything to stop us.
I feel like we have to throw in Luke Stocker and Logan Paulson in this.
Yeah, definitely.
We're talking about the run game as well.
Yeah.
Their additions is going to help as well. So
both are very good blockers. Quadri Olesen, apparently some teams viewed him as a very high potential fullback as well as a short yardage option. I don't know if they necessarily need to mess with that because they have Stalker who can play fullback, but it's interesting to hear that aspect of it. But I think that we will see a lot of improvement there for sure. But with this offense, it kind of goes hand in hand, like the explosive passing and the consistent chunk yardage of the run game. They really go together. Like if the run game is clicking, then the pass game is going to be lighting it up, and vice versa. Like if the pass game is lighting it up, the run game is probably working. So
we saw last year, the passing game, it was a hindrance to a lot of defenses, man. They had trouble, stopping the guys in the air, and they were still not able to run the football consistently. So that just goes to show you. Imagine if they did have a running game to rely on, how really good this offense was. I mean, they can.
Yeah, they just couldn't close out games at all last year. That was the big problem. They were basically always in it. Like they never really got blown off the turf or anything like that. They were a few plays away from being in the playoffs firmly, even with the injuries. So you see 7-9 and you think, oh, this team wasn't that good, but they were a few plays away from easily being 9-7, and then you take away the injuries and it's a lot. We're looking at a lot of a different team. So I think we could see a pretty significant bounce back in 2019. On that front. So no second and no third round pick to talk about to Eric and myself's great disappointment on Friday. But we were here anyway. We were here with you guys. We held out hope until the very end.
No trade, man.
No trade. So
Kevin used up all the trade up mojo in the first round.
Yeah, that was all my juju I had. I used it for that one. So hopefully it pays off. But we know we had cool guys. A lot of you guys hung out with us the whole time, which was awesome. Vlad, I know Vlad Tepes and Robert Kelly, Devin, who I can't remember who it was. I know his YouTube name was Solaire from Dark Souls, and he was keeping track of the W counter for us. So appreciate that as well. But we were up to like 4 or 5 W's each by the end, Eric. So it was pretty good weekend. But so no picks in the second and third round. They did pick twice in the fourth round, one of which was via trade up. So the first pick was cornerback Kendall Sheffield from Ohio State, who was a guy that wasn't really on our radar as someone they were interested in. Player that I liked, but I expected them to more go after someone that was a little more prototypical Dan Quinn, like Isaiah Johnson, who was available. And they didn't. And Isaiah Johnson ended up falling a little bit more than I expected to. So they took Sheffield instead, who I view as a as a raw player, but I think he has significant upside as like an elite slot corner in a year or two. He's arguably the fastest player in the draft, according to some. He ran in the high 4.2s at Ohio State. Someone had clocked him at running like a 4.27 or something like that. So he's absurdly fast. That's always nice. We know Dan Quinn covets that. So now I'll let you take the first crack at Kendall Sheffield. What do you think about this pick?
Speed. He is insanely fast. He won back-to-back 110-meter hurdle championships in high school. He broke Ohio State's 60-yard dash record. He ran a 6.6 60-yard dash time, which, I know we look at the 40, but you're running more than 40 yards in some cases as a cornerback on those deep routes. He's a good tackler. He didn't miss many tackles in college. His technique needs work, and that's gonna take some time. I trust Dan Quinn to go and work with him on that. His instincts in pass coverage aren't the best. He can get there, but then after he gets there, I think he'll have some issues in figuring out what to do. And my fear is that we'll see another Robert Alford situation where he racks up some defensive pass interference penalties. But hopefully we're not over-reliant on him. Hopefully there's good health in the secondary to where he doesn't have to be slotted into one of those outside corner roles. I think he'll have a chance to compete for that nickel corner role to go up against those small slot receivers. But he has tools. He is fast. He's tall. And give it some time, and he has a chance to be a really good corner if he works on his technique, but he needs to really work on it.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. I think a lot of his issues in coverage stem from his inability to track the ball. And he just seems kind of lost with the ball in the air. He doesn't really know what to do. He can get grabby. So I think if you play him in the slot and let him play off, let him keep the ball in front of him, cover those short intermediate routes and the crossing routes and things like that, I think that's where he's going to have success early in his career. And the hope is that Dan Quinn can bolster his technique on more downfield stuff going forward. But yeah, he definitely has some limitations there. Eric, what did you think about the Sheffield pick?
Like you mentioned, he really wasn't much on the radar, and I felt that them trading up for him, they only traded up five.
It wasn't very many spots, yeah.
6 spots. If you go back to the 3rd round or even the top half of the 4th round, I think there were better corner options for him out there where they could have.
Amani Oruwariye lasted until the 5th. I still don't figure that one out. But
even a guy like Julian Love at the top half of the 4th round, while he doesn't have Kendall Sheffield's speed, Julian Love has some of the best ball skills amongst all corners in this draft. Justin Lane was still available in the 80s, so I felt like they possibly could have moved up and got him as well. But when it comes to Sheffield, like Adnan said, he's going to need some time. But the speed and the athleticism that he brings to the team right now, you can't teach that. He has that in spades. The technique definitely needs some work. I think right now, as a rookie, he's best to start off as a cornerback 4. But his potential, his ceiling, in my opinion, is that if he's able to get that refinement that he's needed, we can be talking about an elite slot corner. And I'm talking about elite slot corner. Just because, again, his speed and athleticism, you don't see that a lot from the guys playing inside instead of outside on the boundary. And I see what they're trying to do here. They're trying to take that particular type of athleticism and put it on the inside to cover, the Julian Edelmans and the Brandon Cooks and things of that nature. And that's where it can pay off. He's going to need some time. But
go ahead. I was going to say he'll be very good in on the punt team, on special teams in year 1 at the very least.
Right. Yep. So just like I said, give him some time. Please don't have high expectations for him in year 1 because you're going to be very disappointed. Like I said, he's probably going to be the cornerback 4, start the season off, start his career off. But if given the proper time, man, this guy can be a top 5 slot corner in the league.
Yeah, I do like the pick. This is a typical day 3 Dan Quinn swing for the fences pick.
Round 4 is where you go after those raw guys that need a little time but worth taking a shot on.
Yeah, so I like it. I like the upside there. I don't think he's going to threaten DeMonte Casey this year at all. But he does give them another guy that, because he's so athletic, he can get away with a lot of stuff that less athletic corners might not be able to get away with. Like if you can run a 4.27 or whatever it is that he runs, and you mess up your press, you might be able to chase someone down and get on him before the ball gets there, unlike someone who runs a 4.5. So, that does help out with his ability to kind of recover and play early. But I don't expect he'll be forced on the field. He could potentially be the dime guy. I mean, I think Bleedy probably still has the leg up there just because he has so much experience. And we've seen how solid Bleedy is as a reserve corner. But I wouldn't be shocked if he finds his way onto the field in his rookie season.
Yeah, he probably will. But, you got to look at it from this way. Look at who the Falcons play in their division. DJ Moore sees a lot of time in the slot. Michael Thomas sees a lot of time in the slot. Having that athleticism, on the field, that speed on the field, like, if Sheffield is rounded out, I would like that matchup of DJ Moore against Sheffield because of his ability. He can stick to the hip of just about anybody because he can run with just about anybody. Yeah. So, like I said, give him some time, man. But this can definitely pay off down the road.
Mm-hmm. And he's got enough length too, because a lot of teams are starting to move more big guys into the slot. And unlike someone like Brian Poole, who was very undersized, Sheffield has enough length to be able to hold up against some of the taller slot options as well. So that makes him a very well-rounded options there. Adnan and Eric, any final takes on Sheffield before we move on?
I like his size too. Yeah. He's 5'11", listed at around 190 pounds. So I mean, It's not like if he is a slot corner, it's not like he's going to be one of those really short, fast guys.
Yeah.
He's fast and he has good size too.
Yeah.
Right.
He played on the outside his entire college career, so it's not like he can't play on the outside. I just think he's a much better fit on the inside in the NFL.
Yeah, I like him better there.
Yeah. So next up was the only pick I correctly predicted, John Kaminsky. I nailed that one in my mock draft as well. So I nailed it the day of and the day of the mock draft. So that was like a triple W. But Kaminsky, very interesting player. Again, another typical Dan Quinn selection. Raw, but super athletic, great size. A ball of clay that Dan Quinn can kind of mold. This man ran a 4.69 at 286 pounds, which is just absurd. So, Eric, I'll give you the first crack at John Kaminsky. What do you think about him?
I was on my last mock prior to the draft. I had the Falcons grabbing him in the 5th round. So again, I'm not against them jumping and get a guy that I foresee them to have a true like for. He entered the collegiate level as a dual threat quarterback. He was like 6'4", 220 something, and he ended up, growing into a 6'5", 286-pound defensive lineman that has freakish strength, speed, athleticism, versatility. The only thing is the level of competition. I think the level of competition is going to hinder him in year one, where I think he is not going to be a situation where they're not going to dress him. He's going to play. He's going to see some playing time. But again, he's also going to need a little bit of time. I saw a recent comparison of Kaminsky to Jared Allen, the former Vikings defensive end, which is interesting to me because just like Kaminsky, Allen came from a small school, and he wasn't known much for his athleticism as Kaminsky may be, but the effort level was there for both. So again, give Kaminsky some time. Year one, he may start off as a strong side defensive end, slide inside on the interior on passing downs. But to me, I think his potential, he can fill that Derek Shelby role much better than Derek Shelby did.
Yeah, and I do kind of see him as like that Adrian Claiborne, Jared Allen type player. Right now, he's kind of at that size where he could be a base end and an interior pass rusher. In the post-draft press conference from Quinn and Dimitroff, Quinn said he wanted to see Kaminsky add about 10 pounds, get up to around that 300 range, and play primarily on the interior, more like Jack Crawford. But because he's so athletic, it's possible that he could play on the edge at 300 pounds as a strong side edge and still be fine out there.
I'd rather keep him where he is.
Me too. Well, so we'll see. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, I think he can play as a run defender in his rookie year, and I think he'll be okay at that role. He was a very good run defender in college. That was kind of his bread and butter. But as a pass rusher, he doesn't really have any moves. He doesn't really have any plan, so he's going to need some time there. But the Falcons have a ton of guys they can rotate on the interior to pass rush, so they don't necessarily need him there at this point. But as a base end, I think he's got potential. So, Adnan, what are your thoughts on the Kaminsky pick?
Definitely raw. I don't think he'll contribute very much as a pass rusher off the edge in year one. And it kind of scares me that we didn't get a single player in the draft that can do that, because if Vic Beasley and Takk McKinley don't, step up from what we saw last season, then this pass rush, it's not really going to be very prevalent this season. So that's a worrying trend, and it also worries me if Dan Quinn really is planning on moving him to the interior long term. I don't know if I like the idea of not getting a single true defensive end in this entire draft. So I mean, we'll see where that goes, but hopefully Vic Beasley and Takk McKinley will get double-digit sacks, and that we'll just look back on this and be like, oh.
Yeah, he was just the cherry on top,
Yeah, those offensive line picks were even better in the first round in that case.
That's why I feel that they're better off just keeping them in the 280 range and let them play defensive end from there, because they got enough guys that they can slot inside. Yeah. Giving passing downs or rundowns. I mean, it's it's enough there as it is. While I do like Kaminsky as a prospect, and while I do like his potential, I really dislike the fact that he's the only
Defensive
guy that they got. Yeah, the only sign that they addressed the defensive line in this draft, and that worried me tremendously.
Right. They did get, as an under the radar guy, Chris Odom from the AAF, who was arguably one of the best edge guys in the AAF. Can we expect a lot from him? I don't know. He looks good as a run defender here in the preseason for Atlanta, but obviously they're banking on Beasley and Tack as being good. And Again, yeah, and I think Tack is the more likely of the two to be good. I think this is the year we could see Tack break out legitimately, so that would be nice. And if Tack breaks out and is as good as we hope, then maybe they don't need Vic to be this double-digit sack guy. But can he be 8 to 10 sacks? Can he be consistent with pressure like he was in 2016? Even if he doesn't convert the ridiculous number that he did into sacks like 2016, can he create pressure off the edge? Can he just tackle, for God's sake? Like that would be a start.
I have no faith in Vic Beasley. None.
Yeah.
I'm drained of faith. I'm done. I don't have any faith in him. I don't think he can. I'm not even quite sure he can do that 8 to 10. I think that's a high pedestal to place for him. I have no faith.
Yeah, it's possible. Go ahead on
that. Is the worst case scenario, and it's a very, very prevalent scenario. It very much could happen where Vic Beasley straight flops this season. Tack McKinley doesn't take that next step, and then Adrian Claiborne is solid, but he's a complementary piece. I'm not super comfortable with Adrian Claiborne being our starter, playing the majority of snaps at defensive end every game. And if there is no pass rush, then this defense. It doesn't matter what's going on everywhere else. If there's no pass rush, then it's gonna be a struggle.
Yeah, you're gonna have a bad time. On Sundays. So
really bad.
Yeah. We know. I think if Adrian Claiborne can be that number 3 edge guy and rotate in and provide some depth there and rush, that was where he was always best in Atlanta, as that rotational guy that can come in and get pressure and stuff the run on the edge. And then Steven Means was a really actually very highly graded run defender in 2018. So, he's a guy you can trust as like Brooks Reed basically, he's a role player and he's fine. But if the two guys at the top don't come through, then you're in big trouble. So we'll see. It's possible they could go after a veteran with some of this money that's going to get freed up in June. But
I would love.
There's a lot of names still out there.
I would love bringing in a Derek Morgan for 1 year. That will make me feel a little better because at least we can know we know that Morgan is who he is, and he's consistent enough. Granted, I don't think he's had a double-digit sack season, but he's good for 6 to 8 sacks a year. We can count on that just about.
Yeah, and I mean, if Ziggy Ansah goes unsigned for a lot longer, if he's willing to take, a relatively affordable contract,
maybe I don't see it, but maybe.
But if it's June and he still hasn't been signed, maybe he's willing to take a smaller contract, and that could be a high upside play. He's really been slowed by injuries, but he's still a good pass rusher. So.
And if they can run the ball like we hope they can with this offensive line, that'll make things a lot easier for the defense. The Dallas Cowboys philosophy of drain the clock and then give the defense as few opportunities to mess up as possible.
Yes.
Where the Cowboys were a top 5 defense last year, but before last season, and that was the philosophy.
That plays a part into last year. That defense was unable to close out the games that they needed to close out. Look at Cincinnati and New Orleans. The reason why is because they were on the field for, so many plays. That defensive line looked lazy as hell in the second half of some games, man.
Right.
They didn't have it.
Yep. So we'll hope for better results this year, but there are some potential veteran guys out there. I know someone had asked about that. So hope that may be an option if they can get like Julio's extension done, if they can get Grady's extension done. It might be that they actually have, $7 to $8 million to play around with. in which case they could try to go after someone like a Ziggy Ansah or a Derek Morgan or something like that.
And that's Schrader money too.
Yeah. The Schrader money I think is basically going to pay for the rookies, so I kind of don't count that, but we will see for sure. That all that money put together could give them some wiggle room, and we know they like to carry a few million into the season too. So
and also Julio and Grady, if they can extend them.
Yeah, exactly. So that could be some money. All right, next pick, and this was the most head scratching to me, not because the player is necessarily bad, just because I thought it was a little early, and I was surprised by the name that it was. So it was running back Quadri Olison from Pitt. And he's a big physical back with surprisingly good speed. I think he's 6'1", almost 230, and he runs a 4.58. So that's pretty good for a running back that size. That's like similar to Devontae Freeman's speed for those that don't know. So that's a solid speed. He's actually has some quality blocking ability as well. I can't remember who I went to first last time. I'm going to flip a coin. In my head, it's Eric. Eric, tell me about Quadri Olison.
Another guy that I didn't really necessarily expect to be on the Falcons' radar. I did expect them to target a running back in this draft. And I might as well be blunt with it. There were better prospects on the board than Quadri Olison.
Yeah, my son Divine Azigbo,
Especially ones, if they wanted to get a guy that's a power back that's able to be a quote-unquote closer, again, there were better guys on the board. And I know character is one thing, but I really liked a guy like Jordan Scarlett out of Florida. He was still available. Dexter Williams from Notre Dame was still available. There were some names out there that were able to play that role. But what Olison brings to the game is a power element, and that's an element that they didn't necessarily have even when they had Tevin Coleman and Devontae Freeman playing at the top of their game. They didn't have that bruiser, that guy that can come in and get 10, 12 carries a game and kind of tire out that defensive line a little bit. So that's what Olison is. I again, put a cap on his expectations, probably running back 3 at best.
Yeah.
This year. I do like his size. I watched his tape a little bit, and I will be doing a scout report on him. But I do like his size. I do like his quickness. He's quicker than your most 230-pound backs.
Yeah.
He's not going to win many foot races, but when he gets to that second level and he has some green grass in front of him, he's going to eat up some yards because of that quickness. So we'll see what he has in year one. Again, I don't mind the lane that they went as far as getting a running back. I just felt like there were better talents out there than Olison.
Yeah, it was a little bit of an interesting pick. I think they liked him because they felt like he was a powerful guy that could play in the zone and has experience in the zone. And I think they liked the fact that he does have a little bit more speed than your average guy that size. We'll see if they're correct. I mean, the Falcons have been pretty good at evaluating running backs. The only one I think they've really missed on has been Brian Hill, who his career's in Atlanta is probably over with this pick. I guess we'll see, but there's always a chance that they decide to keep 4 or 5 running backs, I guess.
Right.
So we'll see about that. But yeah, it was an interesting pick. I do like it. So Adnan, what were your thoughts on the addition of Olison?
I was surprised when we drafted Olison, but it's one of those things where, like Eric said, he's quicker than most give him credit for. He had something like 15, 20-plus yard runs in college last season, which was 4th most among this draft of running backs. It was either 15, 20-plus or 20, 15-plus, which I may be getting it mixed up, but either way, it's very
Either way,
impressive.
it's a lot, yeah.
Yeah, but good power back. If Devontae Freeman does go down and he's been injured often, he'd be it'll be Ito Smith and Olison taking the reins for the Falcons, and Olison would get that short yardage work. I think he'd be able to successfully convert those 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2s with this offensive line in front of him. One thing that worries me that he has to improve his pass protection. Isn't the best isn't the best at picking up blitzes, and we know that that's something you have to be able to do in 2019 if you're going to be a running back. So Dan Quinn and Dirk Cutter and the offensive line coach will have to work with him on that. But, this is it's sort of a meh pick, to be honest with you. It slotted in for running back depth, and I mean, let's hope that Devontae Freeman stays healthy throughout all 16 games.
Yeah. Like, if the biggest pick that we can gripe with is a 5th-round running back, then I think we're on the right track here as a draft class. So this is like the most questionable pick for me, but it's like, am I really going to be upset about a 5th-round running back? I mean, not really. So, So we'll move on here to the next 5th-round pick, cornerback Jordan Miller from Washington. Length for days, very, very long arms. Fun fact, has the same length arms as Caleb Mcgarry.
That doesn't make me feel better.
Which is really, really long for a corner, but not quite, not really long for an offensive tackle. So it's kind of funny. But very long, has a lot of experience doing the type of scheme that Quinn loves with that cover 3, with that press man zone flexibility. The main concern with him was that he had a pretty bad ankle injury, I think, either at the beginning of the year or last year, and teams were kind of scared off by that. But Dan Quinn, I think, in his press conference said that he thinks they got a steal in Miller, who was going to be an outside corner. Basically fits the mold of what Dan Quinn's looking for. So, Adnan, I'll let you take the first shot here on Jordan Miller. What do you think about that pick?
He has the potential to be a very good cover 3 corner, which is what Dan Quinn looks for. That's Dan Quinn's defensive scheme. So I'm not surprised at all that he's someone that Dan Quinn likes and covets. He's long, he's physical, he's fast. All Dan Quinn mantras. He ran a 4.4 time, and I don't expect him to really contribute in year 1. I think he'll slot in as cornerback depth, as that, 5th cornerback behind Trufant, Oliver, Sheffield, KZ when he plays corner, and probably Bleedy Ray Wilson as well, which would make him the 6th one. But I'm counting KZ as a free safety for now until we know Ricardo Allen's status. But I mean, he's someone who has decent potential. It's always good to have young depth. I wouldn't expect to hear his name called very much on defense, but he'll be a special teams contributor from day one, and I'm really excited about him and Sheffield on special teams. That's one of those that's the hidden part of the game where you never talk about special teams unless it's a problem, and hopefully we won't be talking about special teams much at all this season with those guys and with the guys we brought in last season like Russell Gage. So, I mean, fairly solid pick, but not super strong. Only did 6 reps at the combine, but hopefully that won't be an issue moving forward.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure I can do 6 reps or better.
Yeah, he does have extremely long arms for his frame, so I think that's part of it. I think that is part of it, but at the same time, the bench press is probably the least important workout for corners. So, he never. I mean, he is a little bit thin. He never looked like he had problems tackling in college. I don't think physicality was a big part of his game. So hopefully Dan Quinn can get him into the weight room, surround him with some of these super swole guys like Keanu Neal, and he'll be like, oh my God, like I want to look like that. So then they, like who doesn't look at Keanu Neal and be like, I have fallen short. So, that hopefully they can make that work. But Eric, do you have any thoughts on the Jordan Miller pick?
Again, he helps out the depth. I didn't expect him to double dip at corner. I thought that this would be a pick where they were used for maybe linebacker. But they brought in a guy that brings that length, brings the speed, and I think this is a possible pick to replace Bleedy Ray Wilson next year, who's only on a 1-year deal. It adds more size. We know Dan Quinn loves size and length in his corner, and he's the ideal cover 3 guy. So I expect his contribution to be on special teams this year. But I wouldn't be surprised if when it's later on down the line if we're seeing him as a solid rotational guy when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I agree. I think he has potential to be a starter, but I think his fit on the team, at least for the first few years, will be as that third outside guy. So if they need an extra bit, and he can match up against bigger receivers, that's one of his things. So he could be the nickel option if teams go into like a big slot formation, or he could potentially be an injury replacement or a depth, just a rotational guy. To fill in for Oliver or Trufant on the outside. But
think what C.J. Goodwin did or what he brought to the secondary. That's what probably Jordan Miller's here for.
Yeah, he could be more of a matchup piece as well. So, I like the pick. I think it's good value in the 5th. I do think he was falling because of injury concerns, but we know that the Falcons are more cautious with injuries than most teams. So the fact that they were not scared off by his medicals probably means that they weren't as bad as reported, that their doctors must have thought that it wasn't as bad as people thought. And I do want to address this while we're here. Robert Kelly asked, are these two cornerback picks alluding to the fact that Trufant is not going to be here next year? And I don't think that's what it is. Cutting Trufant in 2020 doesn't save very much money. It's more of a break-even situation. So maybe 2021, just because you do save like.
Why are we even talking about cutting Trufant?
Not in 2020. I think 2020 is ridiculous. Now I could see it being a financial thing in 2021 because you save like $11 million with that cut. So if Jordan Miller's really good and Isaiah Oliver's really good, then I could see him being a cap casualty, not because he's not good. But 2020, no. If anything, I think I think that this might be a sign that Ricardo Allen's days are numbered because Sheffield is probably going to be expected to take over the nickel in 2020, and that means that they might be moving KZ back to free safety where he looked awesome, and they can save about $6 million by moving on from Ricardo Allen next year when we know that they're going to be tight against the cap, which it pains me to say because I love Ricardo Allen. So we'll see if that ends up being the case, but. That could be. I think it would be more likely to be that than Trufant going anywhere. That's just my opinion. But all right, final pick of the evening: running back / wide receiver / returner Marcus Green. We've heard two different positions for him. On the night of the draft, Dimitroff said, depending on who you were watching for the draft, they either announced it as wide receiver or running back. So that was the first confusion. Then right after the pick, Dimitroff did like a FaceTime thing where he said they were going to list him as running back. Then I think as of yesterday or the day before, Dimitroff went on a radio show and said that, oh yeah, he's going to play wide receiver for us. We just listed him at running back so we didn't scare off any undrafted wide receivers. So I guess I don't know exactly what position he's playing. The truth is that he could play any position. He could play running back or wide receiver. He played receiver a lot more than he played running back in college, but he did take, I believe he took 50 carries or something like that. So, he took a fair number of carries. He caught, I think, 50 passes as well. And he was a very, very good returner. I believe he had 4 return touchdowns in 2018. So, I think it was 3 kickoffs and 1 punt. So, very talented returner. I think he's the favorite to be that returner. Allegedly ran in the 4.37-ish range at their pro day. So super athletic. He's small at 5'9", but he's thick. Like I think he's 190. So he's got a lot of weight for a 5'9" guy. So he's not diminutive. Should be able to take some NFL hits. So Eric, I'll let you get the first crack at Marcus Green. What do you think about that addition?
I think he's more of a receiver than a running back. And I think this is an opportunity for him to get the returning spot on the team. I think Kenyon Barner should be looking over his shoulder right now. There's when it comes to Marcus Green, it's all about speed, man. Getting him in space. He can score from anywhere on the field. He can turn a simple dump off to a 90-yard touchdown. I mean, you get him in space. He can elude defenders left and right. I like his potential on the team. I think he can possibly be the team's a true deep threat for the team, similar to what Taylor Gabriel was. Again, like I said, Barner should be looking over his shoulder right now.
Yeah, I think this spells the end for Barner. I was always skeptical of Barner's place on the roster because he wasn't a guy that could really take carries. So then it was basically like, oh, well, he's the returner then, and then they went and added a returner in the draft. So, sorry, Barner. That probably means that you don't have a future on this football team. I'm sorry, buddy. Anna, what were your thoughts on the addition of Marcus Green?
I also think he's a wide receiver, and I mean, I don't think he'll have a very prevalent role as a wide receiver with this team, even long term. His route tree is just so shallow. He can't really catch in traffic. I think he's exclusively going to be a returner, and I think he'll compete with Barner and possibly beat out Kenyon Barner for that last roster spot, which is that of the team's primary returner. I mean, I hope he proves me wrong, turns into the team's long-term slot receiver. It's exciting to watch a guy with that kind of speed in the offense, but I mean, I just don't see it. I think he's exclusively going to be a returner for this team in the short and long term.
Yeah, I do think they want to use him as a gadget guy, use him as an explosive option, a deep threat potentially, a Taylor Gabriel-like space player. And I think that they could line him up in the backfield and let him catch passes from that position as well. I do like his potential there. I think he's a nifty player. I think this is a chess piece, so we can see basically how far Cutter has come as an offensive coordinator, see if he can really utilize a piece like this. I'm not sure that this would be a guy that I would, like, if Shanahan had drafted, I'd be like, oh, look out, like, draft this guy as like a late fantasy pick because Shanahan's going to know some crazy way to use this guy. So we'll see if Cutter can really get the most out of him. I think he has some potential as a slot player in space, but like you said, he's not going to be a guy that can go up and catch a lot of contested catches. He's not necessarily going to be a red zone weapon, but as a gadget player, a jet sweep guy, screen guy, some deep shots, maybe some running back type stuff. And the return game. I really think his true value is going to come in the return game. If he gets this team one return touchdown, the pick was worth it. If he gets them two or more, I mean, it's crazy. So it's really hard to come by those scores in the NFL. So and even not even touchdowns is one way to evaluate it. But if he can get them 10 plus punt return yards on average, I mean that's a big help as well. So I'm excited to see what he can do. I do like the pick. I think it's very interesting that they added him. And it makes a lot more sense if they list him as a wide receiver because adding two running backs was kind of making things a little dicey at that position. So we'll see where he ends up playing. But now let's get kind of your guys' overall thoughts on the draft class. You can give it a letter grade if you want. But then I'll let you get the first crack at this. What were your kind of overall thoughts on the draft class and how would you grade it with the value of a couple days hindsight?
I like the picks in the trenches because good offensive linemen are what are the key to unlocking a great offense. It doesn't matter how good your skill position players are. It doesn't matter if you have the best wide receiver in the game. It doesn't matter if you have an elite quarterback, which is what Matt Ryan is. If the guys up front don't give Matt Ryan time to work with. I like the Sheffield pick. I like the speed. I think Kendall Sheffield might have been able to raise his stock and would have gone higher had he not suffered that injury at the bench press and had he been allowed to run his 40 time at the combine. The late end, the Jordan Miller pick, the Quadri Allison pick, I'm meh about. But, overall, because they did such a good job addressing the trenches in front of Matt Ryan, because they brought in that defensive line rotational piece in Kaminsky, because I like the Sheffield pick, I'll give it a solid B. And, I mean, hopefully a year from now, we'll be looking back on this and being like, wow, this was the turning point for this offense. We have one of the best offensive lines in football, and we're really mowing through teams now.
Yeah. I'm pretty close to you there, but Eric, I'll let you get your take in here about the draft class as a whole.
I think if we're going to throw a grade out there, I'm somewhat along the lines of a C plus B minus. Them addressing the offensive line, getting help from Matt Ryan, protecting Matt Ryan. Again, at the end of the day, I can't fault them for that, and I'd rather them do that than for them to be complacent and sit on their hands and say, hey, Ryan Schrader's going to come around, or Wes Schweitzer is going to develop. Like, no, he's really not. So they went out and made some improvements, and I like that. Sheffield brings some intrigue because of his speed and athleticism, as does Kaminsky. Olesen while he may not be the best back on the board at that point in time, but he does bring that punishing ability that I wanted the team to look at for some while now. I'm really concerned about defensive end, man. And as much as I like Kaminsky, I really don't like the fact that their only address to the defensive line was a raw 4th-round rookie who probably won't reach his potential until 3 years from now, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about it. I really am.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
If you've been listening to the show, if you've been following me on Twitter, you know that I've been defensive end, round 1 since day 1. I've been pounding the tables for guys like Brian Burns and Montez Sweat. They didn't do it. So, yeah. I mean,
they had the choice of both. So
they did, man.
Yep.
I'm concerned. I really am.
They should have taken Brian Burns. I'm just going to say that. But,
Yes,
it's not that Lindstrom is bad, but.
Not that Lindstrom is bad. It's just.
But.
I felt defensive end was a bigger need than offensive line at that point in time. That's just my.
That's all. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, I'm with Auden. I do view it as a B overall. The one problem I had was that, again, the lack of help for the defensive line is a major problem. I do like that they took a lot of lottery ticket type picks on day 3. Like Sheffield, if he's a hit and he's a very good nickel corner. I mean, we've seen what someone like a Chris Harris can do to your defense, having that elite slot presence. That's a position that offenses have really started to capitalize on. Like, if you don't have a good nickel corner, you're going to have a bad time, especially against teams like the Patriots, who will shred you with guys like Julian Edelman. So if someone like Sheffield works out and pans out, that's a great pick. Same thing with Kaminsky. I mean, if you can get an impact defensive lineman at the end of the 4th round, even if it takes a few years, we could look back on that being an excellent pick.
Then everybody's running base nickel defense now.
Yeah.
Especially Falcons. So having that, slot corner improved is very essential.
Yeah. Yeah, and then with their late guys, it's just, can these guys contribute? Like Jordan Miller, I think there's a chance for him to contribute as a depth guy. Quadri, Olesen, that's the biggest question mark for me. Can he carve out a role that's not already filled? Because I don't think Devontae Freeman and Ito Smith were bad in short yardage. So can he prove that he's a better option in short yardage than those two players? Marcus Green, I like a lot. They needed to address return specialist, and he can kind of give them that gadget player that they don't really have. I mean, I think Russell Gage kind of had some opportunities to do that last year, but he was super raw as a receiver. He basically, I think, played cornerback most of his college career. So Marcus Green gives them another kind of gadget guy like a Taylor Gabriel that can also take some deep shots. So I like the picks. The only thing I would have done differently is added an impact pass rusher early if possible. But as long as they didn't take corner at 14, I was going to come away from the 1st round happy. And they took 2 offensive linemen. They doubled down on saying the offense is our bread and butter. We're going to protect Matt Ryan. We're going to make sure this offense is back to its elite status. And if that works out, that could vault them right back into the playoffs. Because we saw what Matt Ryan looked like in 2016 and to an extent 2017 as well, when he had a quality offensive line in front of him. this offense can look unstoppable. So
he still put up MVP numbers last year while getting sacked 42.
Yes, that is one thing that we can thank Shanahan and Sarkisian for. They have unlocked a mobile part of Ryan's game that he didn't really have before in Cutter's offense, but now Ryan looks like a natural on rollouts. He can navigate the pocket a lot better. So, like, that is one underrated thing I think of these West Coast schemes, is that they've kind of taught Ryan to utilize his mobility, which, if you've ever watched his high school highlights, Matt Ryan was a running quarterback in high school. He was also 6'5" in high school and would just truck kids. It was really funny.
Matt Ryan, if the defense was better and this was straight up out of his control, he would have finished third in MVP voting, or maybe even second with the numbers he put up last season. And next season, if that offensive line can protect him a bit better and those 42 sacks go down to, say, 25 sacks, and the running game is a bit better and the defense is a bit better, I mean, we could see another top 5 finish for him in MVP voting this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think the difference between 7-9 and 9-7 is like a coin flip for most teams. And the difference between 9-7 and 11-5 is another coin flip for a lot of teams. So, like, we just need to get there.
He's trash.
Oh, yeah, Matt Ryan's washed, man.
Noodle arm.
We need to get Mohamed Sanu in here to be the quarterback. Have you seen his passer rating? Okay.
Or we should have drafted Dwayne Haskins, like Gucci Man said. Why not? I mean,
get that man. We could have had Drew Lock in the second round, buddy.
I don't care. He has thrown for over 40,000 yards in his career. He's top 10 in passing yards.
No. Let's just bring back Michael Vick.
Yep.
Might as well.
Yeah, might as well, right? Matt Ryan's washed, buddy.
Ryan's not doing anything.
Yeah. So that's obviously, if you don't like Matt Ryan, you should just log off. So, but that's going to about wrap it up for us tonight, guys. We will be back in 2 weeks to break down rookie minicamp, which is May 10th. I think it's May 10th through 12th. So that'll happen next week, and then we'll break it down the week after that. And we'll be able to give you guys some more info on these undrafted guys, which, to be honest, we just don't know that much about. There's not necessarily a lot of tape on them. A lot of them are small school guys. But one name I will tell you to keep an eye on, the center, Chandler Miller from Tulsa. He was a Remington Award finalist for the nation's best center. Started 38 games at center for Tulsa. Just a little bit on the small side. Doesn't have ideal measurables. I think he was like 6'3", 298 or something like that. But the Falcons really need a developmental backup center. They don't really have a proven option on the roster. Keep an eye on him as a sleeper guy. So, otherwise, guys, want to thank my wonderful guests before we get out of here. First of all, Mr. Eric Robinson on Twitter @_Eric_Robinson. Eric, anything that you're working on that you'd like to plug?
I'm working on the scout reports for John Kaminsky and Quadre Olison. But I do have one out right now on Chris Lindstrom, so give that a look.
Yeah, definitely check that out, guys, if you want to get a better look at what Lindstrom brings to the table. All right, also with me tonight, Mr. Adnan Ikic @SayWhичWay on Twitter, the swole man, according to chat here. People were saying, welcome to the gun show. Yeah, Adnan's got a fresh pump coming into the show tonight, but Adnan, anything that you're working on you want to share with the people?
You guys are feeding my ego. I did 2 pieces predominantly on the Falcons offensive line this week. One talking about how the draft will project to Atlanta's fantasy football relevant players, and the other one comparing the Atlanta Falcons this offseason to Indianapolis's revamped last offseason. We touched on it a little bit in the show. I talked about it a little bit. But that article goes far more in depth about how the Atlanta Falcons pretty much copied the Colts last offseason and how hopefully they can emulate those results.
Yeah, absolutely. Check that out, guys. Those were some great posts as well, some more in-depth stuff. And I, of course, am Kevin Knight @Falcoholic Kevin on Twitter. My Caleb Mcgarry scouting report came out today on thefalcoholic.com, so definitely check that out if you want to know more about him and his very interesting aggressive pass pro technique. I know I'll be doing cornerback Kendall Sheffield soon. And then I think, Eric, you have Kaminsky, right?
Yeah, Kaminsky and Olison.
And Olison, yeah. So we'll be getting through these other scouting reports on the draft picks over the next week or so. So otherwise, guys, thank you for tuning in. Like I said, we'll see you in 2 weeks to break down rookie minicamp and give you a little bit more of a deep dive on the undrafted guys. that the Falcons have brought in. Until then, guys, definitely check out thefalcoholic.com to get you through this dead zone, because we have reached the dark times. After rookie minicamp, it's basically nothing until training camp. So stay strong. We'll be here with you. We'll be continuing to do the show every 2 weeks, and we're gonna have some good discussions on here. We're gonna get to the topics that you guys crave, roster projections, all that good stuff. So until then, guys, I am Kevin. He's Eric. He's Adnan. We will see you again in 2 weeks. Have a great night.